Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Integrate This Live, featuring Google Drive. My name is Indy Sen, and I'm on the apps platform team here at Google.
And I'm Bob Krentler. I work on the product team for Google Apps and Google Cloud Platform.
And what we're here today to walk you through is basically three things. We want to offer you a better understanding of what opportunities exist to integrate with Google Drive. And we'll walk you through some specific integration points that some of our third-party developers typically use to build integrations with Google Apps and Google Drive. And last but not least, we'll be joined by two of our partners, Adam Wagle from Salesforce and Scott Wilkie from Smartsheet, who will walk you through some of their experiences, first-hand experiences working with us on their partnerships and their technology integration with Google Drive. So without further ado, why don't we get started? So one thing that's clear is that we all move faster when we work together. And for businesses, that all starts with collaboration. Google Drive makes it easy for over 1 million businesses to access their stuff, and easier to also do things with that stuff. But what if that was just the start? What if you could actually connect your apps and reach all these businesses at the same time? That's what we're here to talk to you about. Google Drive offers 3 really easy ways, but highly visible ways to do this. The first is open-in. We offer many ways for you to basically open your application from within Google Drive, so to allow users to access your app all from within our own user interface. The second is our access from protocols. These allow you to actually basically access, preview, search, and edit files stored in Google Drive from your application directly. And finally, the other modality that we offer is storing, which allows you to basically store and make your app's output accessible in Google Drive.
And Indy, if I may, I'd say later on, we're actually going to talk about how you can get nice information on how to actually implement each of these use cases.
Absolutely.
And we'll have some nice examples from a bunch of our partners, or a couple of our partners, and we'll also show you how to become a partner.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's start with the open with modality. I think there are a bunch of things that we can do here and that we offer our third-party developers. The first are ways for them to easily create new files from within their app from Drive. The second is opening a file with their app from within Drive. And the third is creating and storing a shortcut to your app's content from Drive again. So let's walk you through some examples. Specifically, here is an example of just within our UI itself, is that we make it very easy for your application to be discovered from within our own main menus. So just the way you see it here is where you're basically opening a new file. So normally, just as any other Drive user would, accessing a spreadsheet, creating a new document, we have the ability for you to place your app in a very prominent way so that people can access it directly there.
Yeah, Google Drive has really good UI extensibility.
The other example is, for example, Smartsheet. So Smartsheet is one of our partners, and you'll actually hear from one of their members of their team, as we mentioned today. But what they've done is one very easy implementation is that they've actually built a way to very quickly open their third-party application, their files from within Drive.
Yep, and here you can see that the Google Drive content from a third-party application is listed just in the same spot as a first-party Google integration. And we'll show you kind of the right ways to do that later in this deck.
And another example is, again, Lucidchart. Let's say you have your Lucidchart file that's right within your Drive folder. You don't have to go and say open with necessarily. You can just actually double-click on that Lucidchart file and even open your file right from there. So you can see that there are different ways in which we make this very easy for developers to integrate with Google Drive, and also for users to find your application and access it. So this is actually one of my favorite quotes. This is from the head of Smartsheet, who says that our integration with Google Drive lets customers access Google Drive documents in the context of their work in Smartsheet, and also serves as a gateway to many of our other integration points with Google Apps. And I think, Bob, here the lesson is that there's not just one integration point with Drive. As long as you create like a seamless, and your desires if your desire is to create a seamless workflow from within Drive and within your applications, there's just many ways to different ways to do that.
Yeah, for example, Smartsheet has 13 integrations with Google Apps.
Yeah.
And if you think about the nature of files, that's kind of the work output of a team or an individual. And so it's really logical for us to provide the APIs and extensibility to allow you to kind of, as a developer, build that flow right into your application. I think Smartsheet does a good job of it. Salesforce does a good job of it. These guys actually won the first ever Google Tech Partner Google Apps Marketplace App of the Year award last year. So we'll hear more from them later.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll have plenty to share. That last example of open with, and this is just to show you how what a rich experience you can create even within your app, is you can basically access your Google Drive files from within your application as well. And this is, I think, enabled by a file picker, right, that developers can integrate and build into their workflow.
Yeah, so this is a company called Prosperworks. They've got a bunch of good integrations. Drive is just one of them. They do a great job with Gmail. They're prominent in the Google Apps Marketplace. But here, yeah, it launches our file picker right inside of their UI. And it allows, as you can see, the user to act as if they really never had to leave the Prosperworks flow.
Great. And here goes another quote from our friends at Prosperworks. So you can see here that there's just tons of opportunity for people to integrate and just really gain visibility for their app from just within our own construct. So if you think about just the millions of eyeballs that are using Google Drive every day, right? And how much, I think we have 240 million active users. We make it really easy for you as a developer to get your to expose your app and for users to be able to use your app from just a few clicks. So the second modality is, we've talked about opening your files with Google Drive, but the second one is how do you actually access Google Drives from within your own application. And again, this is an area where it's super target rich for developers who integrate not only with Drive, but also with other file sharing systems. We want to make it as easy as possible for those developers to integrate with us.
Yeah, this is probably the most common use case here.
Is that right? Okay. Yeah. So why don't we walk through a couple of these? So here is an example of Smartsheet, again, a partner who we hear from, where we make it super easy for them. And this is sort of similar to what we saw with Prosperworks, where we make it super simple for them to integrate and access Google Drive files from within Smartsheet.
Yeah, and here this is a simple import. And notice they have imports for other file types as well. And I think it's really important that we're flexible enough to allow Google Drive docs to exist alongside of any other application.
Yeah. And do you know how long would it typically take a developer to sort of hook into that kind of intent?
That's pretty simple. I think it depends on your client. We do have client libraries and code samples for all different devices, both mobile and on web. So it depends. I think generally speaking, a Google Drive implementation can be done in a matter of weeks.
Oh wow. Okay. Great. And here's another example from Asana. So you can see here, and one of the reasons why we were sort of intent on showing these examples, you can just see that one is that there's a variety of partners who do many different things, but where the common use case is, of course, helping their users find the files that they care the most about. So this is an example of Asana, again, using the same protocol, I believe, to just attach files from Drive into Asana.
Yeah, that's a file picker. Now you could actually render. You could actually just render the list of files however you want. You'll see that in Salesforce. They do it later. I think with Asana, they have a similar user base to us. And I think if you're trying to reach a developer or a customer community that's very cloud ready, I think Google Apps can really be beneficial. And certainly Asana, I feel like, sees the same value.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And so there you go, Bob. I think you were talking about Salesforce. Do you want to tell us a little bit what's going on here?
Yeah, so Salesforce, obviously, enterprise CRM application. They have a series of requirements that they have to meet for their customers. One is that they never actually take ownership of the file. So here's what they do: is they've actually call our list API and render it in their UI. And in the actual implementation, you would see OneDrive, you would see Box, and it allows them to list all files as if they were Salesforce native objects, which allows Salesforce to put them anywhere inside of Salesforce, just as if they were a Salesforce file. And this is really good for them because it allows administrator control, but it allows the user to have a really seamless experience. They also use our preview capabilities and federated search, which is a very recommended way to do things with us.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the enterprise, sometimes even within one organization, there's just different teams that might actually have a different solution, like for file storage that they want to access. So it's great to know that we can integrate with that.
Yeah, and certainly Google Apps Admin will learn more about the marketplace later.
Yeah.
We give developers the capability to restrict, or rather to have their application turned on for an entire company rather than just the individual.
Yeah, great. I think you've worked with Lauren here, but this is a quote from Lauren Kubaski, who's a director and PM over at Salesforce, and I think great traction for them, right, with this integration.
Yeah, and again, they used our Java SDK, and they were up and running very quickly. A lot of effort goes into Q&A and doing the authorization really cleanly. We'll actually hear from his boss later.
Oh, awesome. All right. Can't wait. And then finally, some of you may be wondering, like, do we also support mobile use cases? Well, I think with all the intents and the extensibility frameworks, these are exactly the same types of things we can support. So here's an example, again, Lucidchart, who we had seen earlier, where on their mobile app, the same idea, the same sort of workflow is enabled, is that they can upload or attach a file from Google Drive directly from their mobile instance.
Yeah, and I think Android with Intents and iOS 9 have done a good job of making the handoff between mobile apps really seamless. Here you're integrated right into the OS picker, pretty simple. So if you wanted to make a save to drive button, no problem.
Nice. Great. And then one example is also within some other clients out there. So Outlook, obviously an email client that's used by many people, is you can also attach your files from Google Drive right from Outlook as well.
Yep, and this is an add-on we actually published. So again, we're aware and really happy to do integrations where they make sense.
Yeah. So last is another modality, and I think again here what we're trying to do is just show you some of the most common use case patterns. But this is where a lot of our customers also find some utility is actually just using Drive as like a storage option for your app as well. If you think about especially like mobile devices where there's no real file system to speak of, this is an essential ingredient for especially enterprise apps that where the workflows rely a lot on documents. So in Storin, I think we offer a bunch of options here. Exporting your app's content to Drive, as well as saving files to Drive from your app. So, Bob, do you want to walk through the Ganter example that we see here?
Yeah, pretty simple. Ganter is a project management application that, not surprisingly, does, among other things, Gantt charts with precedents and that sort of thing. Lots of downloads in the Google Apps Marketplace. So here, essentially, all this does is it allows Ganter to use Google Drive as a drive, like a place to save specific application data, rather than the other way around, which is where I actually would pull in information from Drive and into my application and sort it. Here we're simply using Drive as a repository. Yep.
Yep. And then here's another example from Outlook where you can basically save attachments that you receive in your messages directly to Google Drive.
Yeah, customers and end users want different places to store their data. This could be an on-premise client. Maybe you want it stored in the cloud somewhere.
Yep, yeah. I'm sure that must be a very common use case. So great. So here's what we would try to do is what we wanted to walk you through, first of all, were the common sort of use cases and integration patterns that we're seeing from some of our developer partners. The next part of this, though, is, of course, that's just the technology piece. I think when we think of partnerships, Bob, right, like my understanding is that it's not just about the technology. It's obviously about even just like the business partnership and those elements on how do we actually make our partners successful. And I think if you think about just Google as a partner, is that there's definitely advantages to working with Google. And first but not least is the Google Apps Marketplace. So Bob, I know you've sort of handpicked and also like helped get a lot of these partners integrated with and listed into the Google Apps Marketplace. Any color you can offer on the opportunity there?
Yeah, certainly. So Google Apps Marketplace has 750 apps in it, over 200 million installs. We've also recently launched a way for developers to be highlighted, a new and noteworthy category. We'll talk later on about how to become a tech partner, but essentially become a tech partner, then someone that's at Google can nominate you to be new and notable, and then essentially you get a primo real estate slice here on Google Apps Marketplace. Another thing that's important here is GAM is not just a marketplace. It's also, by listing there, it gives administrators an option to single click to install your app for their entire administrator domain. It could be a 1,000,000-seat domain.
Yeah. So it's in other words, it's a great way for you to not only distribute your app, but then also make sure that you're giving enough power and discretion to the enterprise end user, right?
Right. And as a developer, this is also a lead generation source, right? So all of these applications end in a free trial. Right, and you're given analytics and information on who's using your product, for what amount of time, that sort of thing. Yeah. So I think we have some quotes later on that show that these leads are very, very high quality.
I think that's right. Yeah, I mean,
Good timing.
good timing, Bob.
It's like we planned this.
Exactly. Yeah, I've never seen this deck before, by the way. But yeah, this is great. So, and I think this is actually another part. This is the partner that we're going to be talking to today, Smartsheet. But I was just catching up with one of the representatives. Like 2-3 weeks ago, and verbatim, this is what they told us: is that the leads generated from GAM, for them at least, were 220% more valuable than leads that they usually do pay per click for. And that's interesting because sometimes there's always the trade-off between working on trying to get leads, like quantity of leads versus the quality of leads. And I think here you can see that the conversions speak for themselves.
Yeah, sure. And if you're selling to an enterprise or even a mid-sized business, of which we have lots, quantity is not necessarily your friend. Quality is. Our users tend to be very cloud focused, and I think Smartsheet certainly would agree.
Great. So Bob, before we move on from this thing, I just noticed one thing is that Smartsheet here is actually, I can see here that is they were nominated as one of our Google Apps Tech Partner Awards, right? And they were winner of the Best Marketplace App Award. Can you give some more color on like how do we typically select partners, or how we determine that?
Yeah. So. Yeah, great question. So this is actually the first year for this award.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
As Google Apps Marketplace grows, we want to incentivize folks to build on it. The reason we have new and notable. So essentially what happened was, so you'll hear later on that Smartsheet has 13 integrations with Google Apps, not just Google Drive, of course. And just the quality and quantity of their integrations are great. They also use Google Apps Marketplace as a really nice marketing venue. They've got the landing page before installation is highly marketing focused on why you would install it, and then afterwards it's about how to get it out to your users. They've just done a seamless job of integrating in the marketplace. Yeah. So we really recognize the folks that put in a lot of effort. Frankly, there were a ton of nominations. It was really hard to choose the best one.
Yeah, that's interesting. And what you're describing is, it seems like the integration, it's not always like, it's not just one integration and you're done, right? I think there are different ways in which you can approach this, and as long as they match your workflows, what I'm hearing, especially from the Smartsheet example, is that there's flexibility both ways too, and ways for you to drive business results through those integration points.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Like, this is not going to be any great news, or any new news, but the more you focus on your user and the more you can let the technology get out of the way, the better off you're going to be. Which is why we're really happy to see really any integration with Google Drive, as long as it fits within the user experience that people are used to.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So. We've talked to you about a couple examples of what people have done on Drive, but let's not forget, so there's obviously partnering with Google, as we said, does have its advantages. There's the Google Apps Marketplace, which features strong curation, which we were just talking about, and different opportunities for visibility. But if you even just think about the raw number of people using Drive, we now have, I think, over 1 million businesses that are paid businesses that are using Drive.
Yep, over 1 million paying businesses.
And you can see here from this logo soup, which I typically call this type of slide, is like these are companies that have a lot of reach. They're not only U.S.-based companies, but obviously international companies, multinationals, as well as like smaller players, different industries as well. So, I think the takeaway here is that there's tons of opportunity for you, especially as a developer, if you're a domain expert, to have your app be discovered and used by a lot of these enterprises.
Yep, absolutely.
And I think. I've worked with a lot of product organizations, but I think another really cool thing about Google, and this is the scale at which we operate, is that on any given month we have 240 million active users on Drive, right? And I think that number has probably grown since the last time we've counted it, but that's a pretty staggering amount of users and eyeballs that potentially you can get to integrate with your app.
Yeah, and later on we're going to talk about how we kind of scalably reach developers, and obviously this is attractive to developers. But I think it's also important that we realize that folks need help building the right integration and getting technical support. And we'll hear about how we helped Salesforce and Smartsheet get over some technical issues later.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think our philosophy is very simple. If you just think about it as a virtual cycle, like I think the more integrations, the more partners we can get to build on the platform, I think the more engagement, the more seamless workflows we're going to be able to create in the enterprise, which I think is super powerful in terms of like where we're at right now, in terms of like different companies, different businesses, different users having very different needs, but where there's a common sort of like framework for them for those applications to serve those needs. And I think what we're seeing with our ecosystem, and as it's growing, is that I think that typically what we're seeing is the more integrations, the more engagement, not just for for Google, obviously, but obviously for our partners. The more eyeballs and more people that are engaged with those applications. And I think if you start thinking about that as a flywheel, really, I think that just naturally leads itself to like better apps, right? Overall, that are helping build a really great user experience for your customers as well as ours. So it's there's definitely a lot of win-win here.
Yeah, I don't have a lot more to add, except there's a slide at the beginning of this where there's kind of Google Apps or Google Drive kind of in the middle, and then you see slides and sheets and the other applications around it. And it's kind of, I love that slide because it kind of shows where developers can fit into the platform.
Yep.
Google, even with our scale, we're not going to build everything. And even if we did, not everyone would use it. So what we have to do is work with the small companies and the large companies and the mid-sized companies to really fill in these customer use cases that we're not going to build.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think there's very discrete, some big like pockets of opportunities, right, for some of these developer partners to come in and help fill gaps where we may not end up being a player. So it makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
All right, so that brings us almost to the end of our sort of like our content in terms of like just what we've prepared before welcoming our guests. Before we get to that part, here are just like some simple things that you can do today. Don't be scared. Like there's a lot of content and there's a lot of links here that you're taking a look at. But we will actually follow up with everybody who's on this with like a link to these resources. And then for those of you who may be watching this later on as a recording, there's also a very simple link, which is developers.google.com/drive, where you'll be able to get access to all of these links. But here you can see is that we have a really richly documented sort of APIs for Drive that offer you at a glance view of like how do you start building on each of these modalities that we talked about: open with, access from, store in, and as well as just like additional resources. Like I think we not only have the documentation whose links you just saw, but there's also like best practices, code samples, lots of different things that you can see for developers to sort of like get up and ready with our tool set. Yep. As well like official support channels, and then we also have like programmatic offerings.
Yeah, so I think if you decide to build a Drive application, remember we've got a bunch of client libraries, we've got support listed by use case in the previous deck, but really developers.google.com/drive is your friend. That's staffed by our developer relations team. But I would kind of really call out a couple of things on the screen here. So our Stack Overflow channel, the Google Drive SDK, that's staffed by Googlers. Yep. It's not just random people on Stack Overflow. We take that very, very seriously. We listen to your bugs there as well. And then last but not least, if you do publish a Google Apps Marketplace application, we have a technology partner program, which gives you access to some of our roadmap information, gets you invitations to our events, and is highly recommended. So take a look at the form. There's some requirements. You need to have a listing. It has to have good reviews and that sort of thing. But we really encourage, we want to grow that.
That's great, and I think we will probably hear from some of the from Salesforce and Smartsheet in a minute or so about specifically their experiences with that program. So that concludes our prepared remarks. But and here you can see the link that Bob was hinting to, which has a repository of all these links that we just walked you through. But with that, why don't we go over to our Q&A?
Yep. Thanks.
Thanks. Great, and so now we're at the part of the show that's really my favorite part, is we are now joined by folks from the Google team, Smartsheet team, and Salesforce teams, our partners, to really talk about their firsthand experiences about building on Drive. So why don't we go through a round of introductions. I'll start with you, Bob.
Hi everyone, Bob Krentler. I'm a product manager. I work on the Google Apps platform as well as the cloud platform. My main job is to make sure that our partners are very successful building on top of our APIs. So we work with folks large and small to make great integrations.
Awesome.
Scott Willicke with Smartsheet on the product team, and I head up integrations.
Excellent.
And I'm Adam Wagle. I run our Salesforce Files and Content product line at Salesforce, and really excited to be here with you this morning. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely, yeah, no, it's really great for all of you to have come here, and I'm sure the audience is going to get a lot out of this conversation. So, Adam, why don't we start with you? I think coming from Salesforce, the first question that some members of our audience had in mind was just, what was the rationale for Salesforce to build an integration with Google Apps and specifically with Google Drive?
Yeah, so at Salesforce, we're the customer success platform, and so everything we do is focused on the customer. And we received a large number of requests from customers to integrate with Google Drive. A lot of our customers increasingly are using Google Drive and Google for productivity. So that's number one. Number two is we've been fortunate to be recognized as one of the more innovative companies in the world, and so we're always seeking partners and seeking solutions to innovate and add value to our customers. And so we found our customers love Google Drive's capability to do real-time co-authoring in docs, sheets, and slides that really helps their productivity, helps salespersons collaborate around contracts, helps marketing people collaborate around first call decks, service agents around FAQs. So a huge amount of innovation we saw with Google Drive, an opportunity there. And then third is around trust, and trust is our number one tenet at Salesforce. And we wanted to build out an integration that would allow our end users to co-author in the cloud with a trusted partner. So that was a big part of our impetus to partner with Google on this.
Makes a lot of sense. And Scott, for you, we know that Smartsheet has millions of users around the world. What was the impetus for you to sort of build an integration with Google Drive?
Yeah, a lot of the same things. Definitely customer feedback is a big part of that, but also investing in our long-term partnership with Google. We've worked on several integrations with Google, and making sure that we take advantage of building on the latest innovations out of Google is something that goes into our prioritization process. As well as just making sure, of course, we're building integrations that our customers need. We want to invest in that partnership and make sure we take advantage of marketing opportunities with Google as well.
Yeah, excellent. And I imagine that both of you have responded in terms of like keeping an eye on what your customer needs were. And I'm sure this is not the only integration, of course, that you have working for both of your apps. But how would that factor into your equation in terms of like even prioritizing how you worked with us?
Yeah, so we're a premier partner with Google, a trusted tester, and have a best marketplace app. And so as to get all that, to achieve all that, working collaboratively with the product team and building on the latest things that Google's building is a big reason for us.
Got it. Yeah.
And Scott, don't sell yourself short. You guys won Best Marketplace App of 2016. It was the first one, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
and I think it's important. Google Drive has over 1 million paying businesses that use it, right? So you can imagine there's a zillion different use cases that folks have to tackle. And these are just two good examples. Smartsheet in the task management, collaborative work management space, Salesforce obviously in the CRM space. So we work with folks large and small to get the right integration built.
Great. So let's talk about the building part of this. I think that's what a lot of people here might be interested in knowing. And I think we pride ourselves on having great documentation, and obviously a lot of developers are interested in working with us. But what if any technical challenges do you just plain and simple did you have in building your integration with us, and how did you address them?
Sure, I can go first. It was a great experience. We set out to really solve the customer use case of customers being able to remain in the flow of their business process in Salesforce, but yet what they wanted to do is be able to access, so to be able to search and browse Google Drive files while remaining in the flow of their business process and view those files and folders in Salesforce as if they were native files. So one of the initial challenges we had, and I'll get specific here, which is again a great collaboration, was as we set out to meet that use case, we realized that there was an API that we needed to be able to sort files by the most recently accessed, so that when a user, a salesperson, a marketing person, a service agent was in Salesforce and viewed their Google Drive files, that they were sorted by most recent activity. So the most recent ones floated to the top. And we saw that there was an API gap there. There wasn't that capability available in the API. And so what we ran into is a very typical challenge when you're building an app, integrating two different systems together, was we identified an API gap, and initially our team went and wrote some code to basically fetch all of the Google files, and then within Salesforce we wrote an algorithm to sort them by most recent activity, since there wasn't the API. So that brought us to the number 2 point, which is performance is always a key metric when developing these apps. And we actually ran into some performance issues by querying all of those files and then doing a client-side sort. So we partnered with Google and were able to work with you all closely. And you actually, in a very short amount of time, released a new API endpoint that allowed that sort by last activity. And so we were able to partner, quickly release that API. That solved our performance issue. It met our customer's use case for being able to access their Google Drive files while in the flow of business process. And it also, we were able to perform unit testing and guarantee the trust and success of that solution. So that was a great experience and a challenge that we overcome. One of several during that integration.
Great. Yeah, no, that's super interesting, because I think, the fact that you work directly with the Google team, like, and maybe this is a question for you, Bob, is that a typical thing that will happen sometimes with like partners where, especially with like new APIs that we put out there, that you will get that feedback and then we'll be able to respond to it?
Yeah, so I would say this. I think what Salesforce is doing is the right thing. They were trying to have a unified customer experience. In their case, essentially making it so Google Drive files would appear in the same kind of context that users used to, same as Box and SharePoint files, or OneDrive files. And that's fine. We recognize that developers have to integrate across all the file storage services. So for us, I think one of the benefits to the smaller developer, of course not everyone's the size of Salesforce, is we're pretty responsive to bugs and listening. So developer-support@google.com is always listening. We have our support staff monitoring our Google Drive SDK tag on Stack Overflow. Those are real Googlers that are part of our developer relations team that are very, very passionate and about doing the right thing. So for me, I think it's an example where us working with innovative company like Salesforce and Smartsheet benefits all the developers.
Great. Thanks for that. That definitely helps clarify, some questions that I'm sure some people in the audience may have. Scott, can you touch on maybe any of the sort of technical sort of challenges or obstacles that you were able to overcome?
So we've had a Drive integration for some time now, so it's been a while since we originally did it, but big thing on just integrations in general, and even with the Drive integration, is security. We are very particular about making sure that customer data is always safe. So anytime we integrate with another partner, we have very careful reviews about how that any like JavaScript we load from the Drive API is going to be secure and not going to be make the customer's data available in any way. So not necessarily a challenge, but something we spend a lot of time on. And of course with the Drive API, and I think with some of the early feedback we were able to give to Google, we were able to make sure that it's very secure for customers, but something to always keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, you'll see a bunch of different client libraries that should make your life easier. We take security very, very seriously as well. We've got hundreds of folks working on it full time.
Great. So Scott, maybe this question will be for you. Is given how long you've worked with us in particular, I think I think I've heard that you have about 13 integrations with Google Apps in general. Like, can you tell us a little about that, and how do you actually, within your product team or as a company, your business, how do you even go about prioritizing that?
Yeah. So, I guess as I mentioned earlier, really just making sure that we invest in the partner relationship, particularly with Google, is a big part of that. So we look for integrations, of course, that are meaningful to our customers and that we get feedback for, that we know are going to make sense for them. But we want to know what you guys are building and when your launches are, and making sure that we just collaborate really closely with Google to work on kind of the latest technology coming out of Google. And that gives us an opportunity to take advantage of marketing opportunities, like being a launch partner, for example. So while, of course, it's always about the customer and making sure we deliver the right things for the customer, but investing in that relationship and taking advantage of marketing opportunities are key inputs into the prioritization process.
Right, and of course, how do you become a partner is probably the logical question. I think it's really nice if you can. We'll talk about Google Apps Marketplace more in the Q&A. We already talked about it in the presentation. But again, we have 750 marketplace apps, and then you'll have an opportunity to join the Tech Partner Program, which will help you get access to some roadmap info.
Yeah. Well, why don't we maybe just jump to that? Because I know that the Google Apps Marketplace, I know Smartsheet, you guys have been on it for quite some time. Is there, how can you give add any color as to what that has done in terms of like helping you drive business for Smartsheet?
Yeah, so at Smartsheet, we have over 10 million users now, and certainly a big part of how we got there is very carefully monitoring our lead sources and the quality of those leads. So for the apps marketplace, for example, we found that those leads are twice as likely to convert into customers. They're about 300%, over 300% more valuable than leads we get from other sources. And they attach about twice as many files as customers or leads trials do from other sources as well. So highly engaged users as well. So that's something that we monitor across all of lead sources, and a big part of how the marketplace helps drive our business. I think some of the reasons for that are that we know that obviously if they're coming in from the marketplace, they're already using Google Apps, so they're cloud ready. There's not really any anxiety among those leads about using a cloud-only app like Smartsheet. They're IT admins, which I think is great for us. So typically they're trying to solve a business problem. Yeah. In our case, collaborative work management and creating those project plans. They already have that business problem when they come to us and they find out about Smartsheet. So that helps a lot. And then as well as sign-in. So once the IT admin installs the marketplace app that we have, then all of the users have seamless sign-in to our other 13 integrations with Google. So it's a friction-free experience for those users to engage with the rest of their work and organize it in the context of their work and project plans.
That's interesting. So, and just to play back a little bit of what you're saying, so it sounds like it's even a matter of the quality of the leads versus the quantity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think another really important point is as a developer, again, there's a million businesses that pay to use Google Drive, right? Yeah. And like what Scott was saying about, it's a really important feature of Google Apps and Google Apps Marketplace to have a single button where an administrator can just turn an integration on.
That's right.
And there's more than just Drive, obviously. We have different APIs for Sheets. We announced the Slides API. There's all kinds of stuff that developers can build on top of. We're just talking about Drive today. And it's a really important ease of use feature for developers. Also, if you're selling to businesses, a lot of times a value prop is to be able to control who can access what. And so we have tightly scoped OAuth controls for all kinds of data. And these guys take great advantage, both these guys take great advantage of them.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think we're getting close to our time, but I know one question that one that I think could really benefit a lot of the people who are watching us today is Adam, you're at Salesforce, Scott, you're at Smartsheet, Bob, of course, you're at Google. Mm-hmm. The question is, like a lot of people will see the success that you've had, or even the traction, and you both are obviously household names in the space. But what advice would you give to any enterprise SaaS developer out there who's looking to build and potentially even like partner with Google? What advice, if any, would you have for them?
Sure. I would say three pieces of advice. One is throughout the development process and exploration process, stay close to the customer and really work with them. At Salesforce, we spend an incredible amount of time through betas and pilots working early in the development process with customers to really hone the flow, hone the experience. So that's number one. Number two is working closely with the partners. So with Google, as I gave you some anecdotes about how well we were able to work together, but really understanding the capabilities, the APIs, which are everything with these integrations, understanding those in detail, and then also understanding not only what's available today, but knowing the partner and rolling up the sleeves so you know the roadmap as well. So you kind of know the features coming down the pipe so you can deliver them as early and often to the customer as you can. And then third, and I think this one's sometimes non-obvious, is in enterprise software, the customer and the user is not only the end user, it's also the admin. And the admin is a persona and a focus at Salesforce as much as the end user. We really try to make that admin experience seamless and delightful from the point at which they're able to discover new apps, like the Files Connect for Google Drive application, to make the installation, the implementation of that seamless. So we talked about one-click today. There's a lot that Google has done to make the admin setup very, very seamless. And then through managing and permissioning, there's all sorts of admin flows that are unique and very important when developing a SaaS app for the enterprise.
Yeah. Scott, any words of wisdom?
Well, yeah. I think just investing in all those opportunities that Google has been a big part of making us successful there. We've and giving feedback. I would say, like, we were a launch partner for the marketplace in 2010, so we weren't always, didn't always have as many resources as we do today to kind of collaborate, but we've always been, early to give feedback. And anytime Google invited us, like in the Trusted Tester program, is to give that feedback early to Google. And I know Google responds to that, gives us, they appreciate the feedback, and it helps ultimately make the integration better for us. So.
Great. Bob, do you have any words of wisdom?
Again, we continue to learn and we continue to listen. Please continue to keep giving us that feedback. I think one of the most important things to recognize is our continued investment in the Google Apps Marketplace. I think this is an area of a lot of focus for our team. So we recently just launched a category called New and Noteworthy.
Yeah.
So it's a staff curated content section that says, hi folks, we think that these specific applications are serving a new and notable purpose for our users. And so we actually will promote them. So the way you might get involved in some of that is to, again, put your application in the Google Apps Marketplace. It's very, very simple. This gets you all the OAuth hookup as well. And then apply to be a tech partner. And that gets you access to, once approved, it gives you access to our events. And then you can actually ask to be nominated for new and notable. The other thing I would say is, again, these guys have said it before, when we look at potential partners to work with more closely, it's all about user experience. So, as our illustrious founder said, focus on the user and all else will follow. And I think that these guys have done a good job. And the parts where we get involved the most is when there's some sort of a crack in between the seams, right? If there's a seam, we try to come in and try to fix it. Heard about the client-side sorting issue.
Absolutely.
We don't always just write a new API, but when it's the right thing to do, we definitely are listening. So I would just say be in contact, use the channels that we have for you, Stack Overflow and developer-support@google.com, become a tech partner, and register for the Google Apps Marketplace.
Cool. Great advice. Well, thank you all for being part of this show and for taking a moment of your time this morning to join us. I think we will follow up with everybody who's attended this show with some information, some of the those key bullets that Bob was talking about in terms of like next steps and sort of like links to resources. And and with that, Adam, Scott, Bob, thanks for joining us today. And that's it for today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.